Yeah, Ricky started a school named Ensworth in Nashville. Are you familiar with Ensworth?
Okay. Yes.
And yeah, and he hired me over there at the school, to help him and all that. And then I did that for a year, and then I went back into pro football. I went into the XFL.
Okay.
And then the crisis hit, and now we don't even have an XFL anymore. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But this isn't about me. This is about you, Coach. Let's talk about you.
I like to learn about people. But I was at Lipscomb in the late '60s.
Okay. Yeah. So, give me a little bit of history. Andy told me a little bit about you. This is, what this whole podcast or video podcast, however you want to label it, is about. It's Coaches for Coaches, and what we're trying to do is just have guys like yourself, anybody that coached for one day or 100 years on here, we can all share each other's stories and our faith stories. Sometimes guys want to give their testimony on how they got from here to there, and then just whatever you want to add to your story and this story to help coaches grow as coaches.
Okay.
Yeah.
Faith has always been a part of my life. I was raised in a Christian home. And as you know, Lipscomb is a faith-based school. Right. And where I am, that's a faith-based school also.
Where are you at now for all the listeners so they got it? Where are you at right
Rochester now? Well, it's now Rochester University.
Okay.
It started out as Michigan Christian College.
Okay.
And we were a 2-year school. And then we became Rochester College and Rochester University in Rochester Hills, Michigan. Again, a small faith-based school. And it was sort of my dream job. And I was fortunate enough to be hired there in 1971. I started coaching in 72. I actually coached for 38 years.
Wow.
And
all there?
All there but 4.
Rare.
I coached there in 72 and 73. And then my wife and I and our baby daughter moved to Valdosta, Georgia.
Okay.
And coached at a high school 4 years there. The president, Don Gardner, was trying to get us to come back. And we eventually did. We had another child, and so we eventually went home. And while I was at Georgia Christian, I brought Mike Roller to be my assistant. As I mentioned, Mike was my first captain at Rochester. And I always said the second greatest thing I ever did for Georgia Christian was to bring Mike Roller there. The greatest thing I ever did for Georgia Christian was leave and let him take over.
They may not think that.
He went 4 years and didn't get beat. He holds the second longest winning streak in the history of high school basketball, like 128 straight games. But and then we went back to Rochester College, Michigan Christian, and that's where we've been ever since. I think I retired about 10 years ago. I probably could still be coaching, but I didn't have the energy that I had. And, and I felt maybe I was cheating the kids a little bit. I could get fired up every now and then. And then I said, young people need to have a chance too. I was blessed. Rochester was my ministry.
Okay, good.
I always considered it how I served the Lord.
Good.
And when newspaper men would talk to me and ask about my staying there, I would say, you won't understand this, but this is how I serve God every day. And my oldest boy, Clint, was an assistant coach at Kent State under Stan Heath when they had the Cinderella team. And Indiana beat them at Rupp Arena to go to the Final Four. And Clint was being interviewed by Andy Katz of ESPN. And afterwards, Clint called me down, and I went over and I leaned over, and he said, Dad, you got the best job. And I said, well, I believe that forever. And so I still teach at the college. I teach first semester, and then I get to come down here and stay in Florida in the winter months. But
you gotta rough it in Florida.
Pardon me?
You got to rough it in Florida.
Yes.
But then Clint got to take over the job, correct? Was that right after you?
He took over for me, and that was fun. And I would like for one of my grandsons to take over for him, and so we would have 100 years of Pleasance at the college.
Wow. That would be, you know what? That's a story for ESPN in itself, right there.
I'll be long gone.
I don't know. You might be in Florida, just walking on the beach somewhere.
You might be gone, but your legacy, the arena being named after you, will still be there.
Well, yeah, that was very nice. That's very humbling.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that is. Coach, let's talk about the culture that you put together there at the school, and and how you would recruit to that culture, and just kind of your style. And
okay, yeah. I don't know
what you thought. What you thought about your intentionality of the whole idea of coaching, and you said it's your ministry, so kind of just divulge that ministry to other guys, girls that are watching.
Well, let me give you a little background.
Yeah.
In 38 years, I never coached a home game. We had a little tiny practice facility, and Andy has been in it. There were no stands. There probably was 1.5 foot between the sidelines and a cement block wall. And
that's part of your culture right there.
What's that?
That's part of your culture right there.
Well, and I'll get to some things there, but and I went in, and there was only 2 baskets.
Yep.
And a president let me race. What I did was I had the maintenance man cut out of plywood 4 fan-shaped baskets and bolted them to the side of the walls. A number of years later, a president.
That's a tight baseline, Coach.
What's that?
That's a tight baseline.
Oh yeah. And a number of years later, I raised some money, and we put in 4 glass backboards on the side that came out. Now the floor would warp, and the floor was so old, it was made of slats of wood, probably 1 inch by 6 inches. And you couldn't get those anymore.
Yeah.
And the roof would leak. And so what we would do, we would cut out where it had warped, and we just put down plywood. And we would, put finish on the plywood. And it was just the floor on concrete. But
I wish you had pictures of that. That
do.
Sounds a little bit like the floor that Larry Bird played on at the Boston Gardens or something?
Yeah. Well, but here was my philosophy. I wanted to win, and I refused to let what I didn't have be an excuse for winning.
I like it.
And I never apologized for what we had. I always talked about what we did have, what we could offer. I was called up to admissions one day, and I think it was a volleyball player, and the coach was away, and so I was sort of talking to the people. And the mother sort of smugly said, our daughter's been accepted to the University of Michigan. Why should she come here? I said, boy, that's a great question. I said, here she's going to be in a class of 20 to 30 kids instead of 200 to 300. Here she's going to be taught by a real professor instead of graduate assistant. Here the professor's going to know her name. Here she can get a meeting anytime she wants with a professor, and you might rest a little better at night knowing she's in our dorm and not University of Michigan's dorm. Now I realized at Michigan she'd have a degree that said University of Michigan. But you know, I always never had an excuse, you know, for why I never used it as an excuse. We got good kids, and you know, Coach Wooden, who was, you know, I mean, a real hero in my mind, and I had the blessing of knowing him. He had his pyramid of success, I'm sure what you're familiar with. And my cornerstones, I told every kid, education and character. When I would recruit a kid, I very, at the end, I would talk about basketball. But they were here to get a degree, and I wanted them to leave a better person than when they came in. I coached my own son, and I wanted him to leave a better person than he came in.
Yeah.
And, you know, I always told them, you represent our basketball program, you represent the college. And what I told my son, when he went to, my oldest son, when he went to Texas, Abilene, to play football, don't forget what your last name is. So I think you'll talk to my players. We ended every practice with a prayer. And I always said, make good decisions. So again, never apologize for what we didn't have. Try to recruit good kids who played hard, who bought into what we believed. And, you know, it's something I stole from someone I heard years ago. When a kid said, how good are we? I would say, ask me in 20 years when I see what kind of husband, father, citizen you are, then I'll know how good a team we were. And in fact, one of the players who's a minister in Otter Creek, Nashville, made the comment that I used to always say, I'd rather never win a game and be with all of you in heaven than to never lose a game and not to be with one of you in heaven. And so I probably rambled a little bit too long there.
Not at all.
No, that's good. That's good stuff. How did you, you know, when a young guy comes in and they're learning what you're trying to teach, how do you transfer that ownership from, you know, because you really need coaches on the floor. If there's just one, you know, you need those player coaches on the floor. I coached football for a long time, my whole life, right? And if I have to coach from the sidelines and yell all the way out to the middle of the field to try to get somebody to do something, it means that they don't anticipate. I haven't taught them well enough in practice or before we ever got to that situation where they would anticipate those things and that they would coach it. And they would coach their teammates out there, and they would get them lined up right. And they would, so, you know, how did you go about transferring that ownership throughout your coaching career?
You know, well, let me say, first of all, that my career was a transformation. Now, when I started out coaching as a 23-year-old kid, I thought I was smarter than anybody and I could out-coach anybody, you know, and I wasn't going to lose. At the end of 38 years, I realized I didn't know a whole lot, okay? So I say that because I always wasn't like what I was at the end. But to answer your question, we would have our upperclassmen be coaching the younger kids in our drills. I believed in communication. You know, like I don't know if Andy ever saw us, but when we would do the clinics for BCAM, the Basketball Coaches Association, you know, our coaches would come up and say, how do you get your kids to talk? And we made them talk. Let's say we're working on a passing drill and a right-hand flip pass. I'd walk by one kid and I would say, left-handed flip pass to him. And he yelled that out, and it just transferred all over the gym. Where they are communicating with each other. I had a thing, nobody ever stands still in practice. If 5 guys are going down the floor and 10 guys are on the baseline, I wanted them doing jumping jacks, push-ups, something like that. No dead time. And, it was sort of the thing that I planned my practice right from the very beginning. I planned my practice from, every minute, from 3 o'clock to 3:06, from 3:06 to 3:08. And I pretty much stuck to that for 38 years. And we ran from drill to drill. But again, I relied on my upperclassmen to teach, to communicate. I'm not sure if that answers what you were looking for.
When did they, because it's a Jesus principle, right, Coach? He's basically, what Jesus was saying is, I'm not going to be here in 3 years. You better get this. And you better own this. Yes. You've got to own this ministry that I've come down to transfer ownership to you. I am going to live with you, eat with you, sleep with you, and I'm going to transfer this ownership so you understand this. I'm going to live with you. So as a coach, we kind of do that same thing, I think, where we transfer that ownership to the team and to the players, and we entrust that coaching element to them. So then when they go out there, they can anticipate, and then they can they take the information we gave it and they transform it into action. Otherwise, information without action is just a bunch of reading. It's just nothing. Right. I mean, it's just a bunch of information. But until you can apply it and turn it into productive action, that's when you really got something.
Yeah, you don't confuse activity with accomplishment.
That's right.
And we told our upperclassmen exactly what you said. This is your team. You take ownership. That's exactly what we told them. You take ownership. Yeah. And they knew we respected the game. I didn't allow taunting, talking, trash.
Yeah.
We didn't get technicals. When you did, you came out. We left the locker room cleaner than when we got there. We gave the kids $5 for a meal at the end of my career. So we stopped at McDonald's and Burger King's. Yeah. And I wanted the manager to say, that's the politest group of kids that we had. And my upperclassmen, they manage those things.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good stuff. Coach, if, this is Coaches for Coaches. And so we like to teach any kind of coach anything. It doesn't matter what age or what year you've been coaching. You've coached a ton and for a long time. So say some young guys listening to this podcast, and what's something that you could leave with them, Andy? You're not that young.
Yeah, a great question.
So, like, you're 23, Coach. You got your job when you were 23, the head coaching job?
Yes.
What would you go back and tell yourself at 23? Knowing what you know now, go back and tell your 23-year-old self something.
That, you're not smarter than everybody else. You're not going to coach everybody else. But here's what helped me. I told you what our gym was like. I didn't have scholarship money, but I wanted to win games. So
You were a phenomenal recruiter.
No, I took kids that were left over, but I took kids that were good kids who would work hard. And I think great things happen with that. But I studied coaches. I always say study coaches who win, who shouldn't win. I started studying Don Meyer when he got to Lipscomb, because Lipscomb never won, okay? I was there in basketball. I can testify to it. And Don Meyer turned into a powerhouse. I found a guy in Wisconsin at a Division III school named Dick Bennett. And I called him like in 1982. and talking to him about his defensive concepts and that. He won and he shouldn't win. And so I always try to, first of all, find coaches that won who shouldn't win, and I try to, study them. I believe that you win with good character. As a coach, you have a philosophy, and I would encourage them all to develop a philosophy. Now, philosophies can change. An example, I have a philosophy. An event happened. I'll give you an actual thing. We had won back-to-back national championships in 2004 and 5, and there was no doubt we were going to three-peat. And about a month before the national tournament, arguably my best player appeared on social media holding something in his hands that was a violation of my rules. And I dismissed him from the team. He was 6'5", he could guard on the post, he could guard in the perimeter, he could play either one. Okay, I have a philosophy, an event happened. I dismissed him from the team. We lost the first game by 1 point to the team that won the national championship. So there's no doubt we would have three-peated. Now, the third thing is, what do I do? Do I change my philosophy now? Do I adjust my philosophy? Or am I satisfied? I never lost a minute's sleep. And I let the young man come back on the team the next year. And I said, if this helps you become a better person, it's worth us not winning a championship.
Yeah.
I had a rule. Now, here's a bad coach. I had a rule. You don't come in late to practice. Kid came in late. I said, get out. He says, Coach, I said, get out. Coach, I said, get out. Well, his dad had a heart attack.
Oh, yeah.
And he was at the hospital.
I hear you.
So I had a philosophy. There was an event. I changed my philosophy then.
Right. I can see that. Yep, I agree. I'm just moving out of the sun. It's 102 degrees here in Phoenix, so
it's only 88 here.
Let me get it.
Coach, I read something that you might know. I just finished a book on leadership by a college coach. And the gym that he went to was on the second floor. He shared it with like the gymnastics team, the cheerleading team. There were not enough stands, so the fire marshal said they couldn't play games there. They had to play at local schools like I did. His name was John Wooden.
Yeah.
Now, being a football coach, I still think you know his name.
You know what, Coach? I went to John Wooden's basketball camps. I grew up in Thousand Oaks, California, which is about 35 miles north of Westwood, UCLA, 40 miles north of UCLA. And John Wooden would have his basketball camps at Cal Lutheran, where I went to school. And when I was a little guy, I would go to John Wooden basketball camps in the summer. So I know John.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is great.
Yeah. I don't know him. You know him. I knew him from when I was like 9 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old, going to a baskarball camp with 300 kids. But he would always bring in, at lunchtime, we'd always play a lot of basketball in the morning, and then we'd go eat lunch, and then we'd come back, and he would talk, and then he would introduce, one of the players that played for him or former players, and then they would talk for a little bit, and then we'd go back to playing basketball. But, those are great camps. Great camps.
The times that I talked to him, we never talked about basketball.
Yeah.
We talked about our faith.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
We did. We talked about faith.
Yeah. So let's talk about faith and how did you, it's easier when you're at a Christian school. I also coached at a Christian college too. I coached at Wartburg College. Iowa. So it's easier. It's not as challenging. And but even though, and this may not have been the case there for you, but even though you're at a Christian school, not every kid is Christian, and not every kid buys in at the same level. And so, you know, just kind of coach Andy and I through that a little bit, and everybody else that's listening.
I think you have to be yourself. And I learned that your kids have got to know that you really care about them. You know, my players were more than basketball players to me. You know, I can honestly say I love my players. I stay in touch with them. They stay in touch with me. And again, maybe I'll give you a couple of examples.
Yeah.
I had a young man, and he had no religious background at all.
There you go. Yeah.
And in fact, I would have like some of our Bible teachers come in and talk to the kids.
Yeah.
And this boy once, I think it was his sophomore year, he says, like, one of my parents is Jewish, the other is Catholic, I'm nothing. Why should I be one of you when none of you can get along with it about anything? I'm going, whoa. Well,
there you go.
I meet with him
out of the mouths of babes, right? Out of the mouths of babes.
Yes, yes. So he's a captain his senior year with another kid. I'm meeting with him at Caribou Coffee Place, talking about the season in August. And I said, tell me how the college has affected you spiritually. There was silence, and he spoke up. He said, Coach, I think about it a lot more than I ever used to. That year, he came into my office. He closed the door. He said, Coach, my dad has been diagnosed with cancer. Would you say a prayer with me?
Wow.
Okay. And I think that what happens is we had an atmosphere, a culture where, you know, it was something more than basketball.
Yeah. Yeah.
I told you about, we lost that championship game. We could have repeated.
Yeah.
Three-peated. Probably 20 minutes afterwards, my little point guard is still in his uniform, and he's just sobbing.
Yeah.
And he says, Coach, sit down. And he said, everybody get out. So I sit down, and he's crying. He says, Coach, I love you. And I put my arm around him and smiled. Yeah. I said, I love you too, Todd. And he grabbed my chest. He says, no, I love you. He said, I would have never known about the Lord.
Wow.
You know, it was because he came to our college. Yeah. That young man went on and got a graduate degree in Bible, married a great Christian lady, 4 kids. And, you know, they were going to go to a mission, be missionaries in a place in Africa. Before they were training, I think they thought they should wait a while. And I can take an hour telling you one story after another like that. But it was our atmosphere. And I just think your kids have got to know, you know, like, I got a really good player, Steph Henning, who transferred from a Division II school. And someone said, why did you come here? He said, well, he worked for me in the summer. And he says, Coach never tried to recruit me. He knew my mother was sick, and he always asked about her and wanted to pray with me about it. So, again, I think kids, you got to let kids know you really care about them. They're
That's
more
right.
than just a basketball player.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
you're more than just a basketball coach.
You know, I always wanted this. I never wanted people to say that Garth was a coach who was a Christian. I always wanted people to say Garth was a Christian who happened to coach.
Yeah, that's right.
I haven't always been that, you know, I fall like everybody does. But, you know, that was my goal.
Yeah. Well, that's why Billy Graham says, you know, the Reverend Billy Graham said one coach will impact more lives than the average person, more lives in 1 year. One coach or a coach will impact more lives in one season, 1 year than the average person will in a lifetime. And as coaches, it's our honor. It's our honor to be able to have families send their sons or daughters to us and give us a chance to impact them and do it fully, holistically, and wholly holistically.
Yeah.
So that they can learn the truth about life in all facets. So
absolutely. And again, please know.
Honestly, it starts with you recruiting them, because that's when they truly see your heart. You know?
And
then they talk to the other players on the team and they go, is this coach a fraud, or is he really, is Coach Garth a fraud, or is he like this all the time? No, he's like this all the time. And then it doesn't matter what your floor looks like or your gym looks like or anything else looks like. That's the culture that's built.
Yeah. Well, and again, you know, mine was a process, learning over the years. And when I got out of coaching, I was still trying to learn. And because I tell you what, there are mistakes that I've made, things that I have said that I've had to apologize to kids about in the heat of battle, you know. Yeah. And I would always, when I would apologize, I would do it publicly in front of all the team. And I don't think they ever saw that as weakness.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. How about dealing with your assistants? How'd that go? Other than your sons were your assistants, probably, or your son.
No, actually, I went many years with no assistant.
Did you?
I drove the bus. It was a school bus or a rickety old van. I was the trainer. I was the SID. You know, my wife did the laundry. And I finally got an assistant coach. He's now the head coach of the women's at Oakland University. But I finally got a head coach in the early 90s, I think.
Fantastic.
What's that?
That's you know what? I love stories like that.
Yeah.
You drove the bus. You put the Gatorade in the cups. You mopped the floor before the game. You picked up the trash after the game. You made sure all the microphones, all that stuff was in place. You probably sold the programs, advertised. You were the one-man band. I think it's just awesome. I love that stuff.
Yeah, you know, I mean, but I still thought I was the luckiest guy in the world.
Yeah, you never felt like you went to one day of work. You were just doing what.
You know, yeah. Here I am. God's given me a chance to get paid to coach and to be with these kids.
Yeah.
But I always realized this, like I've been fortunate enough to, be inducted in some Hall of Fames. I never thought they were for small college coaches. A funny story was when I got the call from the state of Michigan, I was in Virginia attending a board meeting, and I was driving in the car with my son and two assistant coaches. And the guy called me and he told me, and when I hung up, I didn't even tell them. In fact, I went 3 days before I told my wife, because I really thought Dan Young was going to call back and say, Garth, we really made a mistake. But in all of those years of coaching, I never scored a point. I never grabbed a rebound. I never gave an assist. I never took a charge. Yeah. You know, it was the kids. And I learned more from the kids than they probably learned from me.
Yeah, that's fun. That's good stuff. Well, Coach, we love having you on the show. I don't know if you want to add anything to what you put some frosting on the cake, or the frosting's already about that thick already. So that's really good stuff.
I find myself being really quiet and not asking questions because I like listening to that so much. Just all the stories that some of the guys we've interviewed have told, and I just like to sit back and listen.
Well, Andy is a special young man. And Andy, I didn't coach against you when you were at Wayne, did I?
No.
And Andy played for maybe my best friend in coaching, Ron Hammy. And so I've gotten to know Andy over the past few years, and he understands what it's about. And I appreciate him and what he does.
Yeah, I do too. Well, we're all blessed because we somehow God put us in a position to coach young people, and we've learned, like you said, you've probably learned more from them than they've learned from us, and I can attest to that too. I've coached a lot of kids, a lot of grown men, a lot of different spots, and it's been I think of it as more of a blessing for me than it was for them. They made, so it's just, I think it's awesome. I am so honored to meet you, Coach.
Thank you. I've officiated over 20 of my players' weddings.
Wow.
And I've done baby blessings for them when their children have been born. And and so, like I said, they're more than players.
Yeah. And you're more than a coach.
That's kind of you to say.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for coming on, and we look forward to having you back on a little bit later on, and we love you, Coach.
Thanks, Garth.
Thank you.
Talk
Be blessed.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.